come along with me on this $1,000 wild wedding cake order. It was roughly $980 total for this 4-tier wedding cake request that also included 2 sheet pan wedding cakes that weren't supposed to be anything fancy for the guest party that would feed around 300. And I tell you guys, this was quite the learning experience. It is a massive understatement. I made a plethora of mistakes that, sure, if I was a properly schooled wedding cake decorator, I absolutely would not have done, but I'm not. And my clients know that, and I don't have the money to take classes. This home baking business is currently a supplementary income that helps support my family, that will someday fully blossom into a home-based micro bakery that will also be used to help those in need. If you want to learn more about that, I have some videos on it on my page. Back to the cake. Hopefully those of you who are looking into getting into cakes can learn a thing or two from my mistakes. So what went wrong, you ask? I will start with the fact that I went into this with total confidence. I had no concern that there would be any problem. I was like, I can do this. A 4-tier wedding cake on pillars? Like, I've already done a 5-tier wedding cake before. That was ironically the first cake I ever did. Pretty ballsy. Anyways, I was like, I got this. Oh no, baby. I did not. We'll go ahead and begin with black frosting. Everybody that I saw and watched videos online show how to make black frosting made it look quite simple and easy peasy. And while it was not as easy for me. I was making a huge batch, and the first time I mixed it up, it turned purple, and I was stressing so hard. But apparently it just needed to settle, because once it settled, it turned completely black. But I never heard anybody else mention that, so I don't know if it was the brand of food coloring I'm using, or if I used too much. Something online that I looked up said potentially too much black food coloring. I'm not exactly certain, because it still happened to me the second time that I made my second batch, and I used a substantial amount less than I did the first time. So really, I don't know, but it turned black, and that's all that matters. The only extremely unfortunate part for me is that I spent over an hour trying to problem solve it before realizing it just needed to settle. So I wasted a lot of time on the food coloring. And time-wise, this cake was already very demanding. The first day, I probably should have done this earlier in the week, I know, but I spent hours shopping and looking for particular things. We won't go into all of that, but it took a long time. And then the rest of the day I spent baking the cakes, because I don't have just one large mixer that I can make the cakes with. So I have to make them in separate batches. Nor do I have multiple ovens or a huge commercial kitchen or oven, clearly. And then the second day, I spent most of it decorating the cake. And as you can see, her color theme was a black cake with red piping and gold flakes and accents. This is her wedding, you guys. I know this might not be a traditional wedding cake or even your guys' favorite. Some people might think this cake is hideous, but guess what? It wasn't for you and it wasn't your order. So if you don't like this cake, please refrain from leaving mean comments, because it quite literally has nothing to do with you. Now, I told myself I was going to draw out a simple sketch plan of the decoration plan before I started it. Did I do that? Nope. I should have, and I regret not doing it. But she did send me reference pictures on her favorite style of piping. So I had that to go off of on what specific piping styles she liked and which ones she did not. Those of you guys that have been here on my baking journey know that I'm still relatively new to cake decorating, because I've been doing it for less than a year. And I also haven't made a ton of cakes within this year. So with that said, the tidiness of my piping still needs work, and I try to focus on getting a little better at it each time I do it. As you can tell, my piping isn't super clean work. I think to a customer's eye, they wouldn't really notice it, but to cake decorators, I'm sure you guys can see all the little imperfections in my cake, but I'm working on it. And with every cake, I feel like I am doing better. It is hard to learn when you can't attend an actual in-person cake decorating course. Of course, there are thousands of videos online and people have multiple different techniques, but being in person is a great avenue to learn how to actually cake decorate with the most precision. But we obviously can't afford that, so I'm working with what I got, and I'm proud of myself for how far I've come. And eternally grateful to be doing this in 2024, where we have access to so many people offering free advice, knowledge, and recipes, because let's get real, I would be absolutely nowhere without them. So I am eternally grateful grateful for all of you wonderful bakers online freely giving out all of your learned success. Okay, let's move on to the big mistakes, which was the day of delivery. I had to deliver this cake over an hour away. Again, I'm not a professional, so we boxed up one of the cakes, and the other one, the piping was too close to the edges to want to secure putting it in a box without it sliding around, so we just laid it on a platform in the back of the truck, and then I held the largest cake in my lap. I know it's not the most ideal, but it got the job done, and the cakes arrived securely. This was the largest venue I've ever had to set up a cake in, so it was nice that I had a big kitchen to work in, but I was also told there would be a walk-in fridge, and while there was on a different floor, it was filled with all of the catering food for the wedding, so I could not roll the cake in and out and work on it like I thought I was going to be able to do. So what I had to do was use the fridge that was in this kitchen, which was quite small, and on top of it, this kitchen was piping hot because there was a huge ice maker putting off so much heat. So I was working against the heat, and the cake was getting a little melty. I had to go back and forth in the fridge multiple times. It was a nightmare. As you can see, I'm just putting these little dollops on these little slices of cake. That is what the bride requested, so I just left it like that, super easy and simple. And here we move on to me getting ready to actually stack the cakes, and this is where I ran into my largest problems that I did not foresee, which could have very well been prevented if I was properly prepared. Issue number one, look at those pillars. Did you see how tall they were? I did not expect her to have pillars that tall, and that's on me because I did not verify the measurements and dimensions beforehand because I had no clue that pillars were going to come that tall for the cake. Everything I'd ever seen online, they were much shorter. So that was a very big hinge point on trying to get the cake to balance. So my darling husband had to run and do some last minute errands for me to make sure this cake was going to work out. I wound up waiting for him, and oh, what do you know? Look at that. The fridge started condensating because of it being open too much. So I'm really glad I noticed before the cake got absolutely drenched. Anyways, while I waited, I kept staring at my cake. Every cake decorator knows the longer you stare at your cake, you start second guessing everything. So I decided to add more details because I thought, oh, it could use this, it could use that, whatever. This brings us to the next big issue, which was that the third tier was requested to be a vegan and gluten-free option. And little old me not thinking about the fact that vegan plus gluten-free means that there's no eggs for stabilization and there's no gluten for structure, meaning this cake was very tender, thus it did not want to hold the weight of the fourth tier. I had to pull out some major on-the-spot adjustments, but it wound up working out. I found a way to secure the weight of the fourth tier. But last issue, since there was no walk-in fridge and she wanted day-ahead delivery of the cake, that means it was left in the hands of somebody else to stack on the last tier and the toppers, which were so heavy. I wish I would have gotten the weight and dimension of those as well, because I was really worried that it was going to cave with all that top-heavy weight, but it didn't, and everything wound up working out. I got updates from a wedding attendee, and bless their heart because my stress levels were so high. But all went over smoothly, and the bride was so wonderful and accommodating. I'm really grateful to be able to work with people who are so laid back, because if this was anybody else, it potentially could have gone really sour. So I'm really grateful and for this entire learning experience. I hope some of you cake decorators who are starting out can learn greatly not to make these same mistakes. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. I'll see you next time.